also pray for those who lead us, for those who will discuss tonight and make decisions, that you will give them your wisdom, that their decisions will be in tandem with your righteousness and justice and compassion. So we give our evening to you and this meeting to you, that you'll guide and direct. We thank you in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Mr. Chairman Fisher, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes, Ms. Garden?
Yes, sir. We have received a request to remove what is item K on your agenda, the first public hearing, the outdoor festival permit request from the Top of Virginia Building Association. They've changed the date and will resubmit, and you'll consider it at another time.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to do so. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda, Ms. Garden?
Yes, sir. We put on the consent agenda item B2, the second set of minutes, because the first set of minutes did not have everyone there. So we don't typically put that on consent. And also the Parks and Rec Commission, which requires no action.
All right. Heard the recommendation on consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is adopted. We're fortunate this evening to have Mr. Cliff Jones and his Cub Scout Pack number 63, who meet at Greenwood Volunteer Fire and Rescue. If you'd like to bring your pack forward, sir, and let them introduce themselves, we're very pleased to have you.
These are Cubs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My boys are here tonight to learn about civic duty and as part of their Building a Better World adventure. All these boys are in 5th grade. This is the last year of the Cub Scout program. At the end of this year, they'll be transitioning or crossing over to Boy Scouts, where they'll be on their path to Eagle Scout. Go ahead and bring them up. Okay.
Hi, my name is Aiden, and I go to Evendale Elementary.
Hi, my name is Aiden, and I go to Legacy Christian Academy, and I'm 11 years old.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Christian. I go to Redbud Run Elementary School.
I am Aiden McLaughlin, and I go to Redbud Run Elementary School.
My name is Braxton Ryan Williams, and I go to Redbud Run Elementary School.
Hello, my name is Dylan Jones, and I go to Greenwood Mill Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Dominic, and I go to Greenwood Mill Elementary School. Hi, my name is Matthew, and I go to Greenwood Mill Elementary School. Hello, my name is Teddy Rudolph, and I go to Stonewall Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Anthony Jackson. I go to Redbud Run.
Hello, my name is Reese Swisher, and I go to Greenwood Mill Elementary School.
Thank you for having us, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Congratulations, gentlemen. That brings us to the citizen comment portion of our meeting. Agenda items only that are not subject to public hearing. Did anyone sign up?
Yes, sir. We have one, Alan Morrison.
Mr. Morrison, sir.
I'm no longer as short as a Cub Scout.
Thank you.
Name is Alan Morrison from Gainsborough District. I'm speaking on tab E tonight. My issue is sanctity of life. We now live in a society where life has taken a backseat to convenience. We have been numbed by many years of abortion and the wholesale taking of innocent lives. All human life is sacred and was created in the image of God and was never intended out of convenience to be taken by anybody else other than God. We consider murder to be the grossest of sins and crimes, where when we purposefully terminate a life, we are drawing mighty fine lines to separate some of these. With medical science now being what it is becoming and the rapid growth of it, how can we ever say that there is a certain time when life is impossible or uncomfortable or inconvenient? We should never treat any human life rashly. We talk about Frederick County values and Frederick County quality of life, and the purposeful taking of any life from anybody in Frederick County really goes against all of that. We have the quality of Frederick County life on a downhill slide as we continue to build and develop and to add things everywhere we go. Let not this be one more thing to degrade the life that we see in this community. If you look at history, every civilization prior to its sudden and rapid decline has entered into a phase where it disregarded the sanctity of life. And that's when they began their sharp declines. Just a brief note on the meeting earlier with the accountant, and that I saw that as a very well done, professional, and factual presentation. I thought it was great. But the one thing that bothered me about that whole thing is the concept that government must always be in a state of perpetual debt. Now, we all incur debt at one time or another. We buy houses, we buy cars, but we set limits and amounts and frames. Like the federal government, we now have never-ending debt with a constant thing that how are we going to pay it back? If I ran my household in the same way, I wouldn't have to worry about it because I would run out of it. But eventually my children will have to pay that debt. And the same thing applies to the young people in Frederick County if we recklessly encourage debt. And if I can beg your pardon.
Please continue.
We should be looking at other things rather than just looking at how we can carry additional debt. We need to look at limiting spending. We need to look at wise spending. We can't stop it. We'll never be able to do that. But sometimes it seems in government we run this like a race. How fast we can build the biggest building, the fanciest trim, the biggest rooms, and things like that. We need much more ownership of county projects by the citizens and not by the select committees. We need less bureaucracy in how the money is spent. On September 17th, which is this Saturday, at 10 o'clock in the morning in Mount Hebron Cemetery at the Daniel Morgan Cemetery, back where the big flag is, there will be a brief presentation on the celebration of the birthday of the U.S. Constitution. This is open to the public and will be covered with young people, presentations of ideas, probably more prayer than you would like to have to be facing, and some good speakers on this as well. So this is something that is an open invitation to everybody to come back and celebrate the U.S. Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else, Ms. Garten?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, Board of Supervisors comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Done.
to the Cub Scouts who are here, being a former Boy Scout, never a Cub Scout, I would just encourage you to continue on to becoming Boy Scouts. And as your Scoutmaster said, go for an Eagle Award. It's well worth it down the road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. Number 1 is a closed session and a regular meeting of July 27th, 2016. Would like to handle these?
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes of the 27 July meeting are approved. Tab C, county officials, committee appointments. Let's see if we can get there. Board of Zoning Appeals, Gainsborough.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to place the name of Dwight Schenk before the Board of Supervisors for approval for a recommendation to the Circuit Court for consideration and final appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Motion to recommend Dwight E. Shank to Board of Zoning Appeals to the Circuit Court.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. Lord Fairfax Emergency Medical Services Council, I think we had a recommendation from them. How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recommend the approval of the recommendation of the association with Marky Barronclaw to the Lord Fairfax Emergency Medical Services Council.
I have a motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. Northwestern Community Services Board. Have anyone there? Are we waiting for a recommendation from them?
I think they had given us some parameters at one time as to what they had hoped, to help them with, on their board.
And they
But
were looking for some of the marketing experience, weren't they?
yes, and I had reached out to someone, and the time commitment was an issue, so
So we're still looking?
they're still looking.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. Historic Resources Advisory Board, I'm still waiting to hear back. Parks and Recreation, Supervisor Slaughter.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to nominate Amy Klein Stroh-Snyder for the member-at-large position on the Parks and Rec Commission.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. Conservation Easement Authority.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lodge is willing to serve again, so I would so move.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. Shawnee Land Sanitary District Advisory Committee, are we
I'm not
making
ready with that yet,
progress?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, sir. Conservation Easement Authority, I've contacted their chair, and so they're working on that one. If folks have suggestions, let us know. Parks and Recs Commission, Shawnee.
Not ready, Mr. Chairman.
And another for the Shawnee Land Sanitary
That's
District
not ready.
Advisory, so. And the Regional Jail Authority.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to reappoint Supervisor Robert W. Wells as the Frederick County Representative to the Regional Jail Authority.
Excellent choice. Is there a second?
Second.
A second. Any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. Congratulations, sir. Thank you for your service.
Go directly to jail.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of our committee appointments. Now, request of the Commissioner Revenue for refunds. Ms. Garten?
Yes, sir. The board has two requests for refunds to consider. The first one is to refund Interstate Rescue in the amount of $9,267.20 for personal property taxes and penalties from 2013 to 16, resulting from an audit of the company on reported personal property filings that included items that were non-taxable. So the board would need to approve the refund and make the supplemental appropriation.
How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the refund to Interstate Rescue and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
A motion to approve both. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. Ms. Garden?
Yes, sir. The second request is to Toyota Lease Trust in the amount of $3,477.21 for personal property taxes in 2016, where the refund is resulting from the normal proration of vehicle taxes where vehicles financed by this company were either sold or moved from this locality. So you would need to approve a refund in the amount of $3,477.21 and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
How would the board handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the approval of the refund of $3,477.21 to Toyota Lease Trust and the supplemental appropriation.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries. I think those were all of those. Discussion, tab E on the legislative agenda proposed for 2017.
Yes, sir. We have been working for a bit now on trying to accumulate everything that we could get from either staff or board members for your consideration to present to General Assembly members for the upcoming 2017 legislative session. And I'll give credit where credit is due. Jay Tibbs has done the yeoman's part of the work on putting this together, and I really appreciate that. So what we did is we set it up a little bit differently than what we did last year. Items 1 through 17 at the front are new things that we were asked to add to the list for your consideration. And we identified who made the proposer, so you know who to ask for justification as to why they want it on there. And then the remainder, items previously adopted as part of the 2016 legislative initiatives, we have either left on there because we think they're still valid, and in some cases we've modified the language slightly because of something that may have happened over the past year, and in some cases we've marked out things that have already been taken care of. So ultimately, the board would need to act to adopt your 2017 legislative initiatives, and I don't know that I know any cleaner way to do this than to just take them one by one to see if you want to add each one of the first 17, because they're all over the map in terms of content, unless the board knows off the top of your head that some of them are kind of no-brainers.
Well, let's try. Anyone have a preferred approach on the first 17?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Dunn?
I'd just like to walk through and take each one.
Do that.
And then just ask questions on the person and go from there.
Okay? Do you want me to take each one, Mr. DeHaven, or?
Were you going to go through them, or would you like Ms. Garten to introduce each one?
I think we all have written copies. We don't need to read each item. We might have, if you need to read it for the record, then that's fine.
Yeah, I wasn't going to read it, just so that the public knows what we're talking about.
That's fine.
The first item is to lobby for Medicaid coverage for jail inmates. That's coming from a discussion from the regional jail, and I'm the chair of that authority. So I'm listed as the proponent of this one. In general, a citizen who, an individual who is eligible for Medicaid loses that once they're incarcerated or convicted of a crime, which it doesn't mean they don't get the care, and it doesn't mean the money doesn't get spent. It means it's local money that gets spent instead of federal and state money through the Medicaid program. So it's a request to modify state legislation so that they would not lose that benefit because it's a way to shift it to the locality.
Thank you.
So is there anyone who does not support that staying on the list? Let's try it that way. Okay, number 2?
Number 2 is tax incentives for land conservation, and that's Ms. Slaughter's item.
I don't know if you have any questions, but
Question, a question.
Yes, sir.
How does it change it from existing law? Can you just elaborate a little bit, Mrs. Slaughter, on what you're trying to accomplish and how it changes from
well,
existing law?
frankly, I thought that if we could offer additional tax incentives based on what the current law is, and currently there is a 40% value of the properties that they're putting in land conservation, and they're limited the first 2 years up to $20,000 in tax credits that are offered, and then the subsequent years $50,000. So I did it in a very broad way in that, hoping that we could increase that amount to something that might be more attractive to people thinking about putting their properties in land conservation.
So for a very wealthy person like Mr. Rockefeller or something of that nature who wants to donate half of a state, you'll give them an incentive to do so, so we'd end up with something like a Yellowstone down the road. Is that correct?
That would be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments? Anyone that wants to, disagrees with allowing it to stay on the list? Okay, item number 3.
Funding for public education is also Ms. Slaughter's.
Again, a question for Mrs. Slaughter. I thought that the current lottery fees went all for education. Am I incorrect on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I thought that all lottery fees went for education. Am I incorrect?
Yes, sir, you are incorrect. It is my understanding that since we have gone through the Great Recession, that those funds have been used for other purposes. And initially, when it was proposed to the citizens of the Great Commonwealth, that those funds would be used solely for public education. They are no longer being used for that purpose.
So you're trying to go back to the original intent,
That is correct.
which would then help the county on some of its school funding?
That was the idea.
Thank you.
One question for you. I believe it's correct that the lottery funds were initially set up to fund capital projects for schools. So are you looking to have that redirected to capital and operating?
I think any way we could get monies back to our localities to offset the expenditures of our school would be, I didn't specify, but it would be a wonderful idea if we could have monies used for capital as well as operating. I didn't know if there was a differentiation in the original intent of that.
I'm trying to remember, it happened many years ago, but I believe it was supposed to be directed toward capital projects, but I could be wrong. But you're looking for it to be overall spent on education entirely, not taken out to be doing something else.
Correct.
Okay.
We good with that one? Okay, let's go on to item number 4.
4 is funding for transportation improvements, again, Ms. Slaughter.
I've had a lot of interest in Interstate 81. I think we all know that the amount of traffic that we have on the interstate far exceeds its ability. And working with transportation, we all know that there's never enough funding for transportation. So I felt like this request would maybe be helpful.
Anyone disagree?
Well,
Go ahead.
in a way, generally, of course, you realize interstate highways are federal money, usually 90%. But I do agree that I think we've been arguing for years that the state needs to step up to increase their funding. Actually, the same thing happened here with the transportation fund. They actually dipped into the transportation fund, which was supposed to be used for transportation projects and used for other things. So I think they do need to go back and redefine and put a lock on that box and increase the funding for transportation in all categories. But I see 81 is a priority, but we have a lot of local priorities also I'd like to see included in that list.
Mr. Lofton? Her proposal does include transportation, it just makes the emphasis on 81, so from my reading of it, it would include all transportation, including local roads. I'm not saying I'm correct, but I'm just saying that in my interpretation of what she's trying to do, it would include money for local as well as I-81.
I agree, but I'm not sure I would put the emphasis on Interstate 81.
Okay.
I would put more emphasis on our local projects like Route 37 as opposed to 81, since that is more of a federal highway. But certainly we do need that improvement. There's no doubt about that.
Mr. Lofton, Mrs. Slaughter, or Mrs. Slaughter, it's your item. Do you want to change the word to including "and" as opposed to an emphasis on, just as a thought? It's your call. I'm just asking.
I have no problem with that.
I might suggest that we just make it for transportation funding
In
in the
general.
Commonwealth.
That's probably would clear up anything and hope that we could get some dollars to cover everything.
Yes, but I agree. I think sorely needs to be increased funding for transportation. They just need to put the money back that they've taken out, basically.
Right. That consensus? All right. Item number 5.
Reconsideration of SB 549, which is Rod and Mike.
Mr. Chairman, this is the proffer legislation from the last General Assembly session that says that for residential development, proffers are only to be for impacts specifically attributable to the development. I think there's been a fair degree of concern about that legislation. So as the proposal is drafted, it encourages the General Assembly to revisit it, and at a minimum to at least provide some guidelines as far as who can talk to whom about this and how to administer this new mandate.
We consensus on this one, I think?
I think it's well done.
Okay, let's move on. Item number 6.
Item 6 is generally opposition to eroding the flow of money for revenue sharing projects. We've been able to take advantage of that and leveraged, developer money against state money so that a project could get done, and we don't want those funding sources to get reduced.
Anyone disagree? All right, item number 7.
This came from Thomas Dick, who is our hired lobbyist, and is based on sort of rumblings of taking some of the authority of local governments away that we currently have to approve the location and conditions for placement of wireless communications facilities. And we want that to be retained by the local government as an authority that you have control over.
Anyone have a different view? Thank you. Item number 8.
Commonwealth Opportunity Fund is a request from Patrick Barker, and I don't believe I've seen him here tonight, so.
I think the request is that we encourage the legislature to at least maintain the existing level of funding, if not increase it.
Right.
Can't imagine that we would disagree with that one. Is there any? Item number 9.
Again, it's a economic development one. I'm trying to summarize it in a sentence, and I'm not sure that I can.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe what this one is trying to do is Mr. Barker and Virginia Economic Development Partnership feels that with Virginia having the one-term governor law, that there's a lot of turnover at in the Economic Development Partnership, and they feel that maybe those appointments should not be political, so there's some consistency among the leadership in the Economic Development Partnership, because economic development is based on relationships, and the longer you have folks in those positions, you're able to build a rapport with other countries, other companies, and attract more business. So he feels like stability and leadership is something that would benefit the Commonwealth.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, to expand on that a little bit, Mr. Tibbs is correct. In speaking with Mr. Barker, the Executive Director for EDA, it is important to build that relationship with his counterparts down in Richmond, because we have to work closely with them in order to make sure that the state and the locality are getting the best benefit out of that partnership to attract businesses here. And it's disconcerting when you build that relationship and then you go down there 1 year and you got to start all over building another relationship because of the turnover. So I do agree that we need to make that less political, more of a permanent type structure, so that once you build those relationships, they can continue to grow, and which helps us, which also would help the state.
Is there anyone who disagrees? Item number 10.
10 is increased funding and access to career technical educations and science education, science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM programs, so that employers will have a high-quality workforce. Another economic development initiative.
Anyone disagree? Item number 11.
11 is funding for non-credit credentialing courses through the community college system, also in an effort to enhance the ability of employers to get qualified workers.
Anyone disagree? 12.
12 is related to an initiative to help develop certified buildable sites throughout the Commonwealth, citing the fact that Virginia has the lowest number of certified building sites in the nation at this time.
Anyone disagree? 13.
Death with Dignity Act is Mr. Fisher.
Supervisor Fisher.
Just bring it here on behalf of some constituents. So,
Does anyone disagree?
Mr. Chairman, I do disagree. I can't support this. I think it's biblically wrong. I think it's morally wrong. I think it's ethically wrong. I think that those people that are in that capacity, I can empathize with them. My mother was in that capacity. She was incapacitated. She had ALS. Our fees were significant, but I can't support this at all.
I don't either.
Yeah, same here. I cannot support it.
Others?
I don't support it either.
All right, we're going to remove that one.
Okay, we're striking number 13. Number 14 is the change in the definition of a meeting under the FOIA section of the code, I believe. Supervisor Dunn?
Mr. Chairman, the reason I put this item in is that as a supervisor, by law, I can only meet with one other person. So if I'm trying to persuade two other supervisors on a position or ask their input, I have to talk to each of these 6 other individuals. This would allow me to talk to 2 of them. It would also allow you, as a member of the public, to talk to 3 of us, not 2 of us. I think it would help to benefit the Frederick County government by allowing us to talk among each other. And so I would just move that it would be less, that if you have a majority, in this case 4, you'd have to have a public meeting. But if you have less than a majority, it would not be considered a meeting and would just allow us to converse, to exchange ideas. That's the thought process behind it. In some counties, there are as many as 11 supervisors, and some are, smaller than 5. So I'm just saying that if you have, that a meeting would be a majority.
Comments? I'm sorry, I'm opposed. I think it goes against the openness in government and the operation in the fishbowl and being highly visible. I understand the concern, but I'm opposed.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would agree. I understand what Mr. Supervisor Dunn is speaking of, but I kind of wonder how that plays with, just as you've said, the transparency of the body. I'm afraid that the public would look upon it as being less transparent. And I know that's not your intent.
I understand that. The legislature, 51 delegates and 51 senators, a majority of the Senate and a majority of the House of Delegates can get together and they can caucus and they can discuss things among themselves. So I respect the chairman's disagreement. I'm not trying to make this backroom deals. I'm just trying to say that from an efficiency viewpoint, as well as to get the input of more than one supervisor, for me, would be helpful. If you disagree, that's your prerogative. But I just think it would allow me to make a case to 2 of you. Now, for example, Mr. Lofton, Mr. Wells, I'm making a case to both of you. I gave both your input. You're hearing the same words. Sometimes you, Mr. Lofton, may hear something different than Mr. Wells and vice versa, and that's helpful to me in giving me feedback. And that's the reason I'm making the request.
Yeah.
Other opinions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I agree that it certainly would speed up the process, but again, I think transparency, and I would feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
I'd just rather keep it the way it is. I think it keeps us honest and above board by doing that.
Do you want to make additional comments? Mr. Hoffman?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I would agree with the chairman's and Mr. Lofton and Mr. Wells' comments.
Okay. So it looks like we'll remove that one. Brings us to 15.
That is an effort to change the law with regard to the electronic filing of tax returns submitted by Supervisor Dunn.
Currently, Mr. Chairman, the Commonwealth has said that they would like to have electronic filings. It speeds up their process and makes it more efficient. But they also have said that if you make above a certain dollar amount, that then you have to pay for it, which is essentially a tax. So if the Commonwealth believes that electronic filings benefits them, then it should be irrespective of income earned. And for that reason, I was putting this in here to encourage the Commonwealth to say that if you really believe this is irrespective of income, but from an efficiency viewpoint to do it, then remove the fee that a higher income earner has to pay.
Input? Yes, sir?
Question, does this in any way affect your federal tax returns? Is it the same threshold there?
No, I believe it's simply the Commonwealth. To the best of my knowledge, this has nothing to do with federal income tax returns. The Commonwealth of Virginia has
Right.
specificity on this.
Other comments? Anyone?
Just a question, and I don't know whether, Mr. Dunn, Supervisor Dunn, I don't know whether you know the answer to this question or not, but isn't it private providers of online filing that charge the fee, and that the state, though, provides it for people below a certain level? Is
That is correct.
So it's not really a tax on the part of the state?
No, but it's an incentive on the part of the state. So if the Commonwealth wants to go and encourage electronic filing across the board, then I'm saying that they should provide that service to everybody, not just to those below a certain income level.
Is the indication then that the fact that private providers of online filing incur some expense to provide that service, so that you would want then the state to incur that expense?
I think the state should treat all citizens equally.
Other comments? What do we want to do with this one?
I'll move for adoption and see what happens.
I have no problem with it.
Okay.
Motion on the
Yeah.
floor. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We'll move on. Residential primary, item 16. Supervisor Dunn?
In the Commonwealth of Virginia, last year, they changed the threshold to have a candidate on the ballot. It used to be 10,000 registered, or 10,000 signatures across the board. That was 5,000. It also requires 200 signatures per congressional district. In a presidential primary, this Commonwealth will vote all of its votes for one candidate or another, irrespective of congressional districts. To get candidates to come into this Commonwealth, 4 years ago, only 2 qualified. Last year, almost everyone qualified. But the purpose for this is to say that if you go and encourage a candidate to come into the Commonwealth 3 or 4 times in different parts, we as voters get to see who they are and hear what they have to say. It eliminates the need for signatures, where you can have a minimum signature, but I'm trying to make it easier for a candidate who's running for the presidency to come to Virginia to make his case to us, the public, on why he should be president, as opposed to having a significant signature requirement. Some states require as little as a $100 filing fee. So I'm just trying to make it easier for citizens of Virginia to hear candidates, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Green, whatever, and that's the purpose behind it.
Comments?
I don't have a problem with reducing the threshold. I do question the last paragraph there, though, about 3 appearances within the state. I think that might be extremely difficult, and, somebody from across the line can just walk across the state line 3 times and insist that their name be on the ballot. So I don't have a problem with what I think you're trying to achieve is a lower threshold, but I certainly, I'm not particularly wild about the 3 appearances in the state.
Mr. Hess, seeing as we're not writing the legislation here at the moment, I'm open to dropping that. I'd like to just see it easier for the presidential candidate to come to Virginia, to be on the ballot, so we, the voters, can make that decision on whom we want. and not have a higher fee. Typically, presidential candidates sometimes will hire people to go out and do signatures, and there's an expense to that. I'd rather have that person spend money telling me why he should be president, not why he has to spend X dollars on getting additional signatures. So I'm open and amenable to just lowering that threshold. I'm not into the specifics at this point in time.
Okay.
Other comments? Yes, sir.
So did I hear Supervisor Dunn say you'd be open to just having them look at lowering the qualifications, not necessarily your last paragraph?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine.
Other comments? I have to suggest that the legislature just reduced the requirements by half last year, that, it might get better. This certainly makes it much easier. I have no objection to it. I can't imagine the legislature's going to listen.
Mr. Chairman, I can hope and I can move and I can call, so.
We all have dreams, yes, sir. All right, let's move on. We're okay
Before we
with
leave that one, did we just strike the second paragraph is what we
amended
did?
it, But yes.
We just struck the second
removed last
paragraph? Okay.
and
The last
I
paragraph.
think we support it.
Okay, and then the item 17 is instant runoff soil alternatives, which is also Supervisor Dunn.
Yes.
I am looking to see if we can have a system of voting in which the majority, not a plurality, of voters determines the outcome. I'll give you a couple of examples. In Arlington County, in Virginia, a couple of years ago, a Democratic nominee won with 29% of the vote in a multi-candidate field, and then, with no Republican opposition, became the office holder. So less than one-third of the Democrats in that determined the outcome of a total item. In this county, a couple years ago, we had a sheriff's race in which the winner had a plurality but not a majority. I think that in a democratic system in which people are voting, that I'd rather see a majority, not a plurality. So there are instant runoffs, and the capability is there to do so, and that's what I'd advocate. If that's uncomfortable to any of you, then I'd advocate that you have some type of runoff between the top two contenders. But at least it gives the public the opportunity to go and vote for whom they want, at least a majority of them can. In the most recent presidential primaries, with 17 candidates, you had candidates winning with 25, 30% of the vote. I'd like to see a runoff where you know that there's a majority of candidates supporting a majority of voters supporting a particular candidate, and that's the reasoning for this suggestion.
Comments?
Chairman, question, Supervisor Dunn, are you looking for any specific remedy here, other than it's like the top two? What would be your preference? My preference would be for an instant runoff, which can be done electronically. However, when you deal with legislation, I am open to having some type of a runoff system, whether it's instant or a week after. So when you get into a legislative process, because this is designed to go to the state legislature, I'm open to discussions with them on something that works. Anything would be an improvement over having a multi-candidate field run with less than a majority winning and then determining the outcome for everybody. So I'm open to suggestions. I have my preferences, but I'm not wedded to those preferences. I would like to see some type of a situation in which 50% plus one determine the outcome as opposed to 25, 30, 35, 40%, et cetera. Does that answer your question, Mr. Lofton? Yes, thank you.
Supervisor Dunn and members of the board, I don't have any particular problem with the idea of a candidate receiving the majority of votes. The difficulty I have is that the burden of the expense falls on a locality like Frederick County to conduct another election, and we're just adding additional operating expense to the county potentially.
Mr. Hess, I understand I understand your concern. I think that's just it's the price of a democracy. We all have expenses. You can do it electronically, which would minimize that cost. There's some people that are in favor of that. There's some people that are not. So I'm aware of your costs. I'm sympathetic to your costs. But I think that I think it's a cost to government to have a majority determine the outcome.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I understand the feeling there, but I like the system the way it is now, and I'd like just to say that and have it stay that way. Thank you.
Others' comments? Supervisor Slaughter?
I think it would be worthwhile, at least for me, because I'm not sure that I understand all of the cost and so forth associated with it, and also the logistical part of it from the registrar's office. I think it would have been helpful if I had maybe reached out to the registrar beforehand to understand the implications.
Other comments?
I'd like to think about maybe removing that this year, and perhaps we can have some discussion with the registrar and understand a little better the implications, and perhaps bring it back next year.
Comments?
I would agree with Supervisor Hess. I think a little more information from the registrar would be helpful.
Personally, if someone has met the requirements to have their name on the ballot and they have the polarity of the voting public, they should take their office. But further study can probably always be good. So, other comments?
Mr. Chairman, then,
I didn't hear majority yet.
that's what I'm asking. I'll find out if there's a majority here in a second. Mr. Chairman, I'd move that there be some type of a instant runoff to be determined by the legislature so that a majority, not a plurality, will determine the outcome of an election.
I've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second, anyone? The motion will die for lack of a second, sir.
Thank you.
Were we removing 17 for this year?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then the rest, the other 18 items that were in last year's legislative agenda, we've recommended changes in language for a couple of those. If you've read those and don't need any explanation, I certainly don't need to go into any detail if you're okay with them the way they are, but I can explain them if you do.
I'm okay with as they're listed.
Okay.
I think I hear consensus.
Mr.
Comments?
You got,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dunn?
there are 3 comments on that list that I really think that I'd like to emphasize. They're 9, 10, and 13. 9 is unfunded mandates. I think that the legislature should not require a locality to do something without providing the dollars to do so. If the legislature believes that there is something that should be done, they should provide the dollars. They should not put that tax burden onto local citizens. Number 10, a funding for state mandated positions. I think that the state should fund their employees. They should not require the localities to supplement those funds, and that may include the development of regions within the Commonwealth so that you take care of the disparity between high-cost area and low-cost area. The cost of living in Falls Church, Virginia, McLean is much higher than the cost of living in Gore, much higher than the cost of living in Harrisonburg. So I think that the Commonwealth has an obligation to pay for the salaries of its own employees. This ties into number 13 with the district courts, in which the district courts are state employees. They're not local employees. And so therefore, I think the state should go and fund those employees to the same level as they fund other courts in this locality. I think those are 3 important items.
Other comments? I think we're good.
Then if I could just get a motion from the board to adopt the legislative initiatives as modified and amended, that would be good.
All right. Motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no? And thank everyone for their input. This is laborious, but it's very important stuff. Our voice needs to be heard. That will bring us to the Human Resources Committee's report. Supervisor Hess.
Mr. Chairman, the County Human Resources Committee met in the first floor conference room on Friday, August the 12th. All members of the committee were present. There were 3 changes to the HR policy that were reviewed and considered by the committee. The information that was contained in the board meeting packet did not clearly reflect what changes were being made, so a copy pointing out the changes was emailed to you earlier today, and a copy was placed at your seat this evening. First, the committee unanimously voted to recommend that the board approve the changes to the probationary period policy as printed, and I so move.
Second.
Motions, or second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those, yep. Let's do voice on that one. Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Next, the committee unanimously voted to recommend that the board approve the changes to the training and tuition assistance policy as printed, and I so move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Third, the committee unanimously voted to recommend that the board approve changes to the part-time employment policy as printed, and I so move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Supervisor Dunn.
this is designed just to keep the locality in compliance with federal law, and so I just want the audience to know that that's why we're doing this.
Further discussion? Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Next, the committee also considered a request from the Victim Witness Program Manager to add a position to that office, which comes under the Commonwealth's Attorney. The committee unanimously voted to recommend to the board that the additional position be approved, and I so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there a further discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
And finally, for board action, the committee considered a request from the Deputy County Administrator for Human Services to modify the current part-time position of Child Services Act Assistant to a full-time position of CSA Account Specialist, as described in your packet. The department has the money to fund this change, so no appropriation or additional dollars are requested. The committee unanimously voted to recommend the board approve this action, and I so move.
The motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Will bring us to the Public Safety Committee. Supervisor Fisher.
Mr. Chairman, Public Safety Committee met on August the 18th, Thursday at 8:30 in the morning, and we are recommending a change to the committee's charter. The wording is that the committee shall meet bi-monthly, more or less frequently as circumstances dictate, and I so move for that change to the charter.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there a discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Finance Committee, Supervisor Slaughter.
I just need to get there.
Me too. These things are getting slower and slower. But it sure beats that pile of paper.
All right, sir, are everyone there?
Almost, yes.
Okay. The Finance Committee meeting was held on August the 17th. Let's see, we had 2 members absent. We also had items number 8, 9, 12, 13, and 14 were approved under consent agenda, and I would so move.
A motion, sir, second?
Second.
Chairman.
Second. Any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
I'm going to abstain here because I'm not quite with her on, so I don't, unless she wants to go through those items. There were some carry forwards. Are these all the carry forwards?
Several of them were donations
Okay.
that were being appropriated. For instance, 8,
I remember, okay, the donations and the carry forwards?
yes.
Or unspent grant funds.
Okay, then aye.
Are
You
you-
okay?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Okay, item number 1, the Parks and Recreation Director request a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $13,163. The amount represents a carry forward of unspent fiscal year 2016 funds for the completion of Phase 1 development at Rose Hill Park. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn? Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 2, the Parks and Recreation Director requested a fiscal year 17 general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $4,111.71. This amount represents a carry forward of unspent fiscal year 2016 funds for the completion of Sharando Park Master Plan update. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 3, the Regional Jail Superintendent requested a fiscal year supplemental appropriation in the amount of $105,475.42. This amount represents the first bond payment for the security upgrades, and these funds will actually be coming from their fund balance. There will be no additional funds required. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, is there discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 4, the Winchester Regional Airport Executive Director requests a fiscal year 17 Airport Capital Fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $4,206,400 and a fiscal year general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $157,333. These amounts represent the airport capital budget for fiscal year 17 and the local contribution. The airport capital request requires a public hearing, and the committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
We having that public hearing this evening? Or the future
yes.
meeting? Okay.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second. So we're voting on the appropriation only,
Mr. Chairman?
Public hearing.
and we're going to do it later at the public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, that motion would be out of order.
Okay, sorry.
Motion to send this to public hearing? Is that,
We're holding the public hearing.
It's on.
Scheduled.
It's scheduled tonight.
Yeah.
that's right.
Ma'am.
So we good there, Ms. Mark Garden? Handle it all in the public hearing.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
next.
Okay, then item number 5, the IT Director requested a general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $108,032. The amount represents a carry forward of unspent fiscal year 2016 funds for the data center refresh lease. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the motion carries.
Item number 6, the Public Works Director requests a fiscal year 2017 landfill fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $15,000. This amount represents a carry forward of unspent fiscal year 2016 funds for chiller repair on the landfill gas treatment skid. The committee recommends approval, and I would so move.
The motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
On item number 17, the Public Works Director had requested $12,560 general fund supplemental appropriation. Subsequent to the meeting, there was additional information that has come forward regarding lease versus purchase, and my recommendation at this point would be to recommend it back to the Finance Committee for their meeting in October, so that the committee has the full analysis of the purchase versus lease.
Second.
I'm not sure we need a motion to accomplish that. If there are no objections,
No objection.
we'll refer that back to committee for additional work.
Thank
Is
you
that
so
all right?
much.
Thank
Yes.
you, ma'am.
Okay.
Next.
Item number 10, the sheriff, This was recommended to be transferred within the department. Would we need to make a motion?
Interdepartmental transfers come to us.
We'll need to,
You talk about 10?
item number
Yes.
10.
Mrs.
You were
Slaughter?
going to transfer,
Supplemental appropriation.
Yes, no, we do, because this was not in the budget.
okay.
Number 10,
Number 10?
no action is required. Number
Mrs.
There's no
Slaughter?
action required
Okay.
because we were
right, right.
transferring it
Okay.
between line
That-
items.
That's it, we're all
Okay.
together now.
All right.
Okay.
Did
Item
you miss-
11.
Wait, did you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Chairman,
Supervisor Dunn?
did you miss number 9?
It was consent
That's
agenda.
consent.
Consent.
Okay, fine.
Consent agenda, yeah.
Okay, number 11. And the sheriff requested a fiscal year 2017 general fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $25,000. This amount represents funds to implement an electronic summons system. No local funds required. The committee recommended approval, and I would so move.
Motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? Supervisor
Yep.
Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye,
Chair votes aye and the motion carries.
and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Transportation Committee, Supervisor Lofton.
Excuse me, sir, let me get
Yes,
there.
We're all doing the same thing.
Yes, sir. Transportation Committee met on August 22nd, 2016, County Office Building. We have a couple of items for action. The first one is our Smart Scale HB2 applications. This is a fairly new process the county is going through. And what was presented to us, and what I'm presenting here tonight, is the map of the proposed smart scale applications for which we have begun the process, as well as a draft prioritization of the projects. The committee considered this item and forwarded it to the board for consideration. If you have any questions about the items that are on our list, I'm sure Mr. Bishop would mind coming forward and answering any of those questions that you might have about any of the projects that are listed here.
Questions for Mr. Bishop on any of this list? Anyone? Okay,
Would a brief summary from Mr. Bishop be appropriate?
we can do that if you'd like. Bishop?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I can bring your attention to your left. I've got the map up there. I'll zoom in a little bit and we'll work from north to south in the county. These are all our Smart Scale, formerly known as House Bill 2, applications that we currently have in for consideration with the Virginia Department of Transportation. Frankly, if there are any that you are not happy with, we have until September 30th to withdraw those applications. So, moving ahead. Route 11 North from Stonebridge Boulevard to Old Charlestown Road. We're discussing the widening of that with VDOT to a 4-lane divided facility. Moving just south of that, the green and the blue here are actually a single unified project, which involves the realignment of the northbound I-81 ramp from its current location to the location where Redbud Road currently ties into that roadway, thus aligning the ramps for I-81, allow us to remove a signal. And then, of course, a component of that would be the realignment of Redbud Road over to Stonebridge Boulevard. Moving south, we have the intersection of Cincinnati Road and Cressley Drive. We're requesting the addition of turn lanes there. The most recent data available to VDOT doesn't let us go all the way with a traffic signal, but we are pushing for at least turn lanes. Since you've heard about that project recently, I'll also add that related to the traffic calming study that you have requested of VDOT in that area, we are working with the Regional Commission to get all the counts done and that sort of thing that needs to feed that study, so that's ongoing as well, though that portion is not part of the Smart Scale application.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
Will you take questions?
Surely.
On that item, because we've talked about this before, Mr. Bishop?
Yes, sir.
and I know that Mr. Fisher is probably is equally interested in here. People coming onto Cincinnati, they're coming up the road. I mean, do whatever you can to make that more safe. So turn lane is fine, but one of the concerns has been that those on Cressley going on to Cincinnati have a hard time seeing traffic coming up the road. There's about a 3 or 4 second interval between the time you see a vehicle and the time you arrive. So if you can work with VDOT, whether it's a mirror or something to try to address that, that'd be helpful.
We're definitely bringing that up. One of the issues you have there, particular to site distance, is more topographical than vegetational, which is a different type of fix cost-wise. So I expect we're going to be pushing for incremental improvements over time.
I'm just suggesting
yes.
that I'm just bringing it to your attention so that when you talk to VDOT, you can relay that. Thank you.
No problem, sir. As we move south, this one is on there for your information only, although those of you that are members of the Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board will be voting on this as well. Exit 313, the replacement of that bridge, we are doing as a regional application through the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Next, you have Sulphur Spring Road from Route 50 to Landfill Road. That's a project that's been in your 6-year secondary program for some years. Recent updated cost estimates by VDOT indicated a bit of a shortage, so we're seeking gap funding on that to keep that going, ongoing and current, and hopefully completed.
Mr. Bishop again.
Sir.
On Greenwood Road, which is with Sulphur Spring, just include that conversation in. You know, we have constituents here that are concerned about that intersection. You're aware of that.
Yes,
so
sir.
again, you talk to VDOT. It's both it's both Sulphur Spring and Greenwood that we're concerned about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next, we have the intersection of Paper Mill Road and Route 522. This project was a result of a meeting between your staff and VDOT and the Sheriff's Office. They had some concerns, particularly in the evening, the backing up of right turns. So we're seeking an extension of the right turn lane from eastbound Paper Mill Road onto southbound 522. I expect that'll be one that'll score well. Part of that discussion that came up was there was also some signage there that limited turns for certain times of day, which has been removed, which is actually already helping somewhat as well, although that's an incremental piece of that. Now, if I can jump across 81, if only I could, right? We are going to look at Route 11 South, vicinity of Shawnee Drive and Opequon Church Lane. Once again, this is an informational project on the map for you because that's, again, due to the fact that it's right there on the city-county line and crosses in terms of the improvements. We're looking at that as an MPO application, so that's going to be coming forward to you in that format. This is actually 2 projects. You're looking at exit 310 on the left of your screen, which is obviously currently undergoing significant work. This is the first project we're applying for is one we also applied for last year, Route 37 extension from the end of the work VDOT is doing over to Route 522. We are trying for that again. However, we are also trying for an alternative variation of that project, which would be Route 37 from where VDOT is currently working over to where Warrior Drive is supposed to be, and then Warrior Drive from that location down to where it currently terminates. That would have significant impacts, for instance, on Tasker Road traffic in the vicinity of exit 310. We're trying to work with some local development to perhaps give that project a shot in the arm in terms of competitiveness, because since these all end up in a bang-for-buck scenario, we're not quite sure where that's going to end up right now. Project may end up being a standalone application, but we're continuing to work on that process. And as I continue to work south, as you're well aware, thanks to the good works, particularly of our Commonwealth Transportation Board member, Dixon Whitworth, the first phase of the Route 277 improvements and widening was funded through last year's House Bill 2 Smart Scale process. So we are seeking the next logical segment, which in this case is Double Church Road to Warrior Drive. So we're seeking basically a continuation of the improvements we've got, going to a 4-lane divided roadway, improving the access management through there. And finally, the last project after that is the intersection of Warrior Drive and Route 277, which I would note, if the one I just noted is successful, this project would get swallowed up by that larger project. However, we're still looking at this as a project of independent utility, in which case what we will be doing is extending the right turn lane from eastbound Route 277 onto Warrior Drive. Those folks trying to get into the schools, particular issue during the AM hour when folks are trying to get into the school, as well as improving some of the pedestrian treatments from that intersection into the school itself. With that, those are all of our proposed applications at this time. Those are all in with notice of intent to VDOT. We've met all their deadlines so far, and like I said, if any of those your feelings have changed about, or the Transportation Committee's feelings change about, we can pull those until September 30th. And of course, I've included a proposed ranking of the projects, although I must note that the key reason for ranking the projects is not so that they can compete against each other. It's literally if VDOT gets overburdened with applications so that they know which ones to not end up ranking. Although a number of conversations with VDOT staff now do indicate they're not worried about that scenario at all. However, the ranking is still a required part of the process. So there you have it.
Questions for Mr. Bishop, anyone?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think what we're looking for tonight here is the prioritization that we have that Mr. Bishop has outlined here. If there's any desire on part of the board to rearrange our prioritization, because that will play into the application process, is that correct?
It will only come into play if VDOT finds themselves unable to score all the projects. But yes, it's still a necessary part of us moving forward.
You have a recommendation?
So that's a list in order that's contained in the packet?
Yes, that's right. That's a prioritization that we had set and wanted to forward to the board to get your consensus for Mr. Bishop to try to give him guidance and make sure that we're on the right track here when he makes those applications and when he starts getting receiving feedback for those applications. So I would ask for the board's consensus that this prioritization is in the board's liking.
Would you like to make that in form of a motion?
I would make that in form of a motion.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Those are done.
so Mr. Bishop you went from north to south, I believe, in your presentation. I'm looking at your item here. It just disappeared off my screen. So are you saying that all of these are equal priority? I'm just asking.
No, in your packet, you see a draft prioritization. I apologize, it's not on the screen.
Was it before this, or was it before this?
It is right after your map in your packet.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm
Find those? Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Good?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concluded.
Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to public hearing. Proposed amendments to Frederick County Code, Chapter 158, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 5, School Buses, Section 158 through 19. Who is presenting this one? Anyone?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
This is an ordinance to do two things: to authorize the schools to install a camera monitoring system on the outside of the buses to monitor for people who pass the school buses when they're stopped discharging or receiving children, and then in turn to authorize a violation procedure so that if the camera identifies a violation, then the video is reviewed by the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office, if it finds that it is a violation, can issue a summons that's then served by mail that is subject to the owner of the vehicle, subject to a $250 fine, and then the ordinance sets out the procedure for implementing that. This is per legislation. Well, actually, it's been on the books for a while, but needed to be updated last year due to some flaws in it that was actually in the board's legislative package last year. So it is now, it's gone through the committee process and is now before the board and here tonight for public hearing. And I know there's at least 1 or 2 representatives from the public schools here if there are any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board member?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
are we having the public hearing first, or are we going to make a proposal first?
No, we're going to have the public hearing first. So this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning these proposed amendments to and processes for red light cameras in our code? Anyone? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. Discussion recommendation? Supervisor Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, this is a good proposal that will help everyone in the county. On a test that was done earlier this year, there were, I believe, 279 violations within a short time frame. So on any undivided highway or undivided road, if you're going and you see a school bus with its red lights flashing, we would encourage you to stop. This law will make it a penalty not to stop. Under current law, the bus driver has to go and testify in court. Here we'll have a camera, it will take a picture of the person or the license plate of the driver. If that driver was not driving, but had given his car to his husband, wife, son, daughter, grandkid, etc., they can go and testify on that. If the person is driving, then they're going to have a $250 fine. This will help the school, but it will help the school bus drivers not have to go to court. It'll help the community by encouraging people not to go and pass school buses with red lights going on. It will help our children by not being hit or harmed. And so this is a very good item. One comment that I would make on this, so I'll make that. So therefore, I would propose that we pass this ordinance.
Is that the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
I have a motion to adopt code changes and the implementation of this program. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
On the discussion point, one of the issues raised was the clerk of the court that would deal with this thought that there might be some additional cost to them. And so for the fees that are meant to be received by this, I would encourage the board to have those fees go to the court to at least alleviate some of those costs and some of that items. In addition, I would encourage the school system to go and get the best deal they can for the county, and then just see where we go forward. But I'm concerned about the additional cost to the court, and if some of these monies can be used to help that, that would be a positive.
Further discussion? Yes, sir.
I had a question, if Mr. Orndorff doesn't mind answering. I believe this is at no cost to the school system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct, sir. Thank you.
I'd like to echo Supervisor Dunn's comments about the additional burden on the clerk of the district court. We had a legislative agenda item encouraging the state to pay him. We heard earlier in the year some remarks from the clerk regarding the problems in the clerk's office, and I'd like to do us to do whatever we can to find ways to direct the ongoing funds realized from the payment of the fines to offset the additional burdens on the employees of the clerk's office. And it looks like it's probably not appropriate for it to be part of the ordinance, but perhaps some resolution of the board or some other way we could have a standing allocation of those funds.
Mr. Hess, when we get finished with this, I'll be glad to make such a resolution immediately afterwards.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I understand under this proposal, the Sheriff's Department also gets some administrative funds coming from, because they have to certify that these violations are, or to validate them.
Correct. Further discussion, anyone? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Now, as far as distribution of funding, I think that we should probably leave that for further discussion. We turn to it another day.
I agree.
Is that acceptable?
That's fine. I think that Mr. Hess and I just made a
I want to
comment.
ignore it, but I think
No, that's fine. We just,
further discussion would
Fine.
be in order.
okay.
So that brings us to a public hearing amendment to the 2016-2017 fiscal year budget pursuant to Section 15.2 2507 of the Code of Virginia 1950 is amended. The Board of Supervisors hold a public hearing to amend the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget to reflect the Winchester Regional Airport Executive Director request a fiscal year 17 Airport Capital Fund supplemental appropriation in the amount of $4,206,400. This amount represents the airport capital budget for fiscal year 17.
Yes, sir, I can speak to that
Yes, ma'am.
briefly. You have to make a supplemental appropriation in order for them to spend an awarded grant. The grant is predominantly federal and state money. There's a local match requirement of $217,228 from the various localities. Our portion is $157,333, which is the amount Ms. Slaughter referred to in the Finance Committee report. So you have to hold a public hearing because it's above the amount that triggers it by state code
Right.
to make that budget amendment.
Right. Any questions, Ms. Garten? All right. Says a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this appropriation? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. This is 98% federal and state money, 2% locality contributions shared between those folks who fund the airport. How would the board like to handle this request?
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval to this amendment to the 2016-17 fiscal year budget for the supplemental appropriation, $4,206,000, $400 for the airport, regional airport.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
going forward for next year's budget, I'd like to for us to consider putting some type of a placement holder for the airport. The airport's a good part of this community. It's early in the year fiscally, and so I think that in the next year's budget process, if we can just put then a average item. I talked to Mr. Fisher, he may want to make some comments on that as well, but that way the public knows that this is something that we have planned for. It's not necessarily unexpected. The federal grants come in at a time that is not in the same time frame as our fiscal year, and so it'll just make it a little bit easier, I think, next year, that if we have the similar situation, it's money that we know we're going to have, as opposed to having coming out of our contingency fund. And if Mr. Fisher has anything else he wants to add to that, he's welcome.
Appreciate your comment. I do think that in a recent meeting that we've reached a point where we think we can get their budget cycle in sync with the cities and the counties, which will, I think, address your question and your concern. Is there any further discussion?
I think just history there, Mr. Chairman, the fact we used to do that, we used to provide a certain amount of funding. The fact that it did get spent, it was requested into the airport not to include it because it was just kind of frivolous being there, never used. Well, now it's being used, and at the recent meeting you referred to, the airport's going to be, the authority's going to be happy to provide, again, funding, and it'll sit there until the federal grants are given. So it may be a number that sits on the budget, but it's just a budget item, doesn't get used until the grant is available and accepted by the federal government, the FAA. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
With Mr. Fisher's comments, it's always a carry forward. We've had a number of carry forwards in today's meeting, and so if it were something that were in the budget, I'd have no problems if we're not used in year one to be carried forward to year 2, 3, 4, so that it's there when we know it's there. But I think it just helps out, so thank you.
It's clarification. It's more related to how the federal do their grants and when they release those funds and how they actually determine who's getting what, and it's very late in the season. So, further discussion, anyone? Ready to vote? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries.
Mr. Chair, before you move to the next thing, we do need the supplemental appropriation in the general fund budget
For this.
of our piece of the 157,333, I believe it is.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I meant to include that in my motion, or I'll make a
Well, your
motion.
your resolution is specific to,
I left it out. I'll make that motion in for supplemental appropriation of the, what's it, 157?
157 what?
333.
333. Yes.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing, conditional use permit 06-16. Mr. Chair, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This conditional use permit before you tonight is for a public garage with body repair. It's currently inactive. It's located at 151 Conestoga Lane. The property is currently zoned RA rural areas. The properties to the north, south, east, and west are also zoned RAs to rural areas, and their uses are church, vacant, and residential, respectively. If I could turn your attention to the screen to your left, give you an idea where the property is. This is actually on Route 11, a little bit past Salem Church Road, almost near where the way station is, off of Conestoga Lane. This is just illustrative that the applicant put together, and I'll get back to that as we come through the conditions for this conditional use permit. Mr. Chairman, this is a request, again, to update and amend an existing conditional use permit for a public garage. The property is subject to conditions of a conditional use permit 0190 approved by the Board of Supervisors at their March 28, 1990 meeting for a public garage. Currently, the public garage has not been in operation, but meets all the requirements of that conditional use permit that was approved in 1990. However, there were two conditions on that conditional use permit, and they were assigned to them, and one of them, condition 3, there would be a one-year permit that was reviewed annually, and condition number 4, if the use, occupancy, ownership of the property changes, this conditional use permit will expire, and a new conditional use permit would be required. As you're well aware of, conditional use permits run with the property, therefore conditions such as 3 and 4 are no longer recommended by Frederick County, so that's why the applicant is here today to clean that up. I also, in your package, I think you got the original conditional use permit was approved in 1990 showing those conditions. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission at their August 3rd, 2016 meeting had forwarded these conditions to you for review. 1, all review agency comments and requirements should be complied with at all times. Number 2, all repair activities shall occur completely within enclosed structures. And number 3, all exterior storage of parts, equipment shall be screened from view from the surrounding properties by a opaque fence or a screen at least 6 foot in height. Number 4, the hours of operation should be limited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Number 5, no more than 4 employees allowed with this conditional use permit. Number 6, no retailing or wholesaling of parts or vehicles on site. Number 7, no storage of inoperable motor vehicles on site. Number 8, no more than 5 vehicles awaiting for repair to be on site at any given time. Number 9, an illustrative sketch plan should be submitted to and approved by Frederick County, and all plan improvements shall be implemented prior to operating this business. And that's our illustrative plan. As you know, we've changed our ordinance. Instead of requiring a full-blown site plan, it kind of shows what the applicant is going to do as assigned to the conditions on a conditional use permit. Any expansion or change of use will require a new conditional use permit for number 10. At the Planning Commission, at the time the applicant was asked for a sign, and basically he's going to get one business sign that shall comply with our cottage occupation sign requirements, not to exceed 4 square feet in size and 5 feet in height. The applicant, in reviewing this conditional use permit with staff, is amenable to the conditions. For the record, Mr. Cliff Borden is here in case, Mr. Chairman, you or any supervisors have any questions. And of course, staff is here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, Mr. Chair? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to know, maybe the potential applicant would like to know, when does a vehicle waiting for repair move into the status of an inoperable vehicle?
An inoperable vehicle, that is the code definition. Inoperable vehicle is one that's not tagged, registered in the Commonwealth of Virginia, or can't operate on the roads in the Commonwealth of Virginia or Frederick County. That would be, that'd be inoperable.
All right.
Other questions, Mr. Chairman? I had just one, if you don't mind, sir.
Sir.
The illustrative plan?
Yes, sir.
It was hard to read on our pads. It looked as if at some point maybe prior, but my question is about this round. Is he being required to expand the width of that drive?
The driveway?
Yes.
Actually, I'm glad that's a good point. The original plan that was sent into the fire marshal required that. There was a miscommunication. Staff worked with the fire marshal and the applicant because it was already existing. So no, the short answer, no. I believe there's another comment under the fire marshal's comment that rescinded that.
Thank you. I missed that. I had trouble reading it. Any other questions, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, sir. This is a public, I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
One
Mr.
question.
Dunn.
On these repairs, if there's engine repairs, et cetera, the applicant will go and dispose of, oil, gasoline, et cetera, in a proper place as opposed to on his property?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's part of the agreement?
Yes, sir. As you're well aware of, condition number 1 is that sort of catch-all.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this application? And I'm sorry, sir, if you'd like to make any comments, I should have asked you for those before I opened it up to the floor. Would you like to? All right, sir. Anyone else like to comment concerning this application? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend the approval of a conditional use permit number 06-16 of the Board and Real Estate LLC for a public garage with body repair.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. That brings us to conditional use permit 07-16. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. It's a pleasure to come before you this evening with this conditional use permit application for a cottage occupation for an archery sales and supplies and equipment dealer. The property is located at 3641 Green Spring Road in the Gainsborough Magisterial District. The property is presently zoned RA, or rural areas, and it is currently a single-family residence. The proposed use again is a cottage occupation for the sale of archery equipment and supplies. Here's an overview of the site. It's located to the south of Green Spring Road. It's in a heavily wooded area. The site contains one single family detached home, an outbuilding, and a shed. Here is an illustrative provided by the applicant. The applicant intends to house the business in an existing outbuilding, and there is ample parking available for customers. The Frederick County zoning ordinance allows for cottage occupations in the rural area or RA zoning district through the approval of a conditional use permit. The proposed use will again take place within an existing structure on the site. The applicant does not propose any modifications to their property, and it is generally compatible with the surrounding rural residential uses. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission has recommended the following conditions. All review agency comments and requirements shall be complied with at all times. The applicant will be permitted one small cottage occupation sign. The hours of operation shall be from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesday through Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. The business shall not operate on Sundays or Mondays. There shall be no more than 25 customers per day, and no employees are permitted beyond those that are not residing on the premises. And any expansion or change in the use shall require the applicant to come forward for a new conditional use permit. The applicant, Cletus Teets, is here this evening to answer any questions, as is staff. Thank you.
Questions, staff?
Yes, two questions. The idea of closing the business on Monday, did that just come through the normal application process?
The hours of operation and the days of the week that the business would operate were proposed by the applicant. They can be amended as the board sees fit, and I'm sure the applicant wouldn't disagree with that either.
Other questions? Anyone? Thank you, sir. Would the applicant like to add anything? Thank you. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this conditional use permit application? Anyone? Anyone at all? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing.
Gainsborough.
It's the fire door. We'll close the public hearing. Recommendation? Everything's fine, the door just gets held open too long. We'll all be okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to suggest that the conditional use permit not include the provision that it be closed on Mondays and that longer hours of operation would be permitted. This would avoid the applicant having to come back through the process for approval should the business be successful enough that they find it's advantageous to be open Monday through Saturday and open earlier hours. And I would move approval of conditional use permit 0716 for GT Archery with a change to condition number 3, that it be changed to read, the business may operate between the hours of 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays. The business shall not operate on Sundays.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Brings us to rezoning 07-16 of Cincinnati Road Rentals LLC.
No.
No?
Crossroads.
Crossroads Grocery.
Crossroads Grocery.
Where did I go? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Absolutely. Let's try conditional use permit 08-16 from Crossroad Grocery, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Members of the board. This is a conditional use permit before you tonight. It's for a country store with fuel sales. The location of this property is at the intersection of North Frederick Pike, or 522, and Cedar Grove Road. It's in the Gainesboro Magisterial District. Property is currently zoned RA, rural areas. The proposed use is an expansion of an existing country store. If I could turn your attention to the screen on the left, I'm kind of blown up. There's actually 2 properties involved with this conditional use permit. One is the existing store name. It's at the Crossroad Grocery. I think most of us, if they've driven up 522 or wherever the store is at. It's also the second property behind it that'll be part of this conditional use permit, and it'll be another layout to give you an idea what the expansion would look like in this country general store. Country general stores are permitted in RIA zoning districts with an approved conditional use permit. The Crossroad Grocery provides general grocery and beverage merchandise, fuel sales, and a small prepared food service area without any seating. This country store has been operating for more than 50 years, and research of county records revealed that a conditional use permit never has been approved for this existing country store. Therefore, this use was established prior to the requirement of a conditional use permit, and there it's considered to be an illegal nonconforming use. The increase the level of nonconformity may be accomplished through an approval of the conditional use process. The conditional use permit also allows the county to place restrictions or conditions on a use when the use is considered inappropriate to, in an effort to mitigate any proposed impacts. This applicant is desired to expand the size of this use by adding a 1,500 square foot addition to the store and a 3,000 square foot fueling canopy and fuel area. The 1,500 square foot addition to the store will allow for an expansion of merchandise sales and storage, as well as the ability to expand the existing restroom facility to also provide for a handicapped accessible unisex restroom, which it does not have now. This is the screen to your left again gives you the layout of what the applicant is looking to do with the proposed fuel islands behind the current where the current store is, and also shows you where the new addition that they're going to add to the store that you see out there today. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission recommended the following conditions assigned to this conditional use permit. Number 1, all review agencies' comments and requirements shall be complied with at all times. Number 2, an engineered site plan shall be submitted to and approved by Frederick County. This site improved accordingly prior to operating store activities on this site. The project site will adhere to commercial parking and landscape standards. Number 3, one monument sign shall be allowed on the property. The sign shall be limited to 50 square feet in area and 10 feet in height. Number 4, store hours of operation shall be from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Sunday. Gas canopy lighting shall be only permitted during stores hours of operation. Number 5, no outdoor display of goods will be permitted. Number 6, fueling of commercial over-the-road trucks or tractor trailers will not be permitted. Fueling of delivery trucks, automobiles, and farm vehicles will be permitted. Final site plan development shall not allow for tractor trailer parking or high-speed diesel installation of diesel pumps. And number 7, any expansion or change use will require a new conditional use permit. For the record, Mr. Evan White of Greenway Engineering, who's representing this applicant, is here to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, that you or any board members may have, and staff is also here to answer any questions that you or any of the board members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Either you or Mr. White can answer. If this permit is approved, and I would go by there after all the improvements have been made at 1 a.m., could I pull up the pumps and buy gas?
Yes, I work with the applicant. They currently now have that. They have 24-hour fueling up there.
The reason I ask that is number 4, condition states that store and fuel sale hours of operation shall be between 5 a.m. and 11 p.m.
I want to make a correction. What
Is there
you
a
read.
conflict there?
Yeah, actually, what was approved and it did not get in your agenda, and I apologize, is what number 4 on the screen says. It's a store operations. They're still going to have fueling open, but the store operations are from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.
So just a store operation.
That's correct.
The
And
fuel was 24.
24, that's what.
Without canopy lighting after 11.
Yes, sir. They want to bring the canopy lighting down so it doesn't have any light out, on the property, because if you go up there, if you went up there tonight or after this meeting, as late as we're going, you would see that the lighting is turned down and the canopies, you just have the fuel pumps there, and you pull up there, there's enough of lighting for you to fuel up there.
So number 4 is amended.
Yes.
Okay. Is that?
It's in your agenda, it isn't, but it was amended through the Planning Commission. It just did not get in your agenda as read on the screen, sir.
Okay.
And my apologies for that.
Other questions, Mr. Chairman? Supervisor Fisher?
Mr. Chair, on county ordinance dealing with those canopy lights, aren't they required not to go off the property?
Yes, sir. We do have, our lighting ordinance does.
Some of those lights are just talking about spillover, and so they'll just go straight down and not spread out.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Chairman? Anyone? Yes, sir. Supervisor
Mr. Chairman,
Dunn?
at the Planning Commission, there was concern that tractor trailers would come through and fuel up on diesel. This facility, though, has diesel as a fuel, correct?
That's correct.
How do you prevent the owner from being penalized for the one truck that does come up at 2 o'clock in the morning because it came off the road? You says, hey, I know there's fuel here and gets it. So I'm not looking to go and penalize the owner for the actions of somebody else. And that's why I'm having the conversation. I don't think the owner should be penalized for the actions of somebody coming onto his property, knowing that it's there. I'm not looking for 18, items a day, but if there's an occasional one, maybe it's one a year, one in 2 years, he shouldn't be penalized for those actions. So is there any discussion on how to address that?
Well, one of the points that was talked, you were at the Planning Commission, Mr. Dunn, was the final site plan, again, as condition number 6, about the high-speed pump installations. I know if you're familiar with any of the truck stops that we have, or if any of you have driven past them, those pumps are, when you get an 18-wheeler, for instance, in your scenario, they usually look to go to a high-speed pump, not a regular pump that you go if you have the diesel 250 or a farm vehicle or delivery truck. That would, I think, alleviate that concern. Also, the lanes coming in here, as you're well aware of, and showing you what that site plan is going to limit that. So I think what you have out there today, just to fast forward, and I'll let Mr. Watt explain it, because when we worked with this through the site plan, that today, if you go out there to, like, any time in the AM, when their deliveries come in, they're parking those trucks on 522 now to bring deliveries into this store. And if you get more than 2 trucks up there, I think there's an issue. To alleviate the problem you're asking, Mr. Dunn, I think the high-speed fuel installations for the diesel will eliminate that possibility.
Okay, I mean, I want to be fair to the owner and not penalize him for something that occurs outside of his control.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir?
Can you elaborate a little bit on the proposed entrance off of Cedar Grove Road? What is VDOT looking for? What are we asking for specifically? Maybe Mr. White will answer that.
Mr. Weitzer, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman DeHaven, members of the board. Evan White with Greenway Engineering. Mark's done a good job of conveying the application, but I think in order to maybe answer some of the questions, it's probably better for me to try to address them. So I'm going back to the conceptual plan that's in your agenda package. The site, as you know, was the two parcels. This shows it, of course, without the interior property line, but nonetheless, the idea behind the sketch plan was really when we started developing this concept, of course, we recognized that VDOT wanted to hopefully gain some safety improvements out of this application process. And so what we attempted to do in working with VDOT was to show a new layout facility. And of course, my laser pointer is not working real well, so you want to show me where the all right, good. This isn't going to be pretty, but bear with me. So where the red line is, that's the existing entrance off of Cedar Grove Road. And then down below that on 522, you'll see with hatching, that's the other entrance onto 522. The idea behind the conceptual plan was to move the full commercial access entrances further away from the intersection. So the one that you see on Cedar Grove Road that's identified as new entrance right here would be this. Now, what we have talked to VDOT about doing is converting this full access entrance right here into the right in, right out only, and that's primarily because with the existing canopy there is fueling need, and the area is so small, you couldn't get a fuel truck in there to drop its load and adequately turn around and get out. So then, of course, the big improvement is with this entrance here. That would go away altogether. And as you know, coming down the hill on 522, that's a pretty significant improvement. Moving this to the new entrance right here, and then also taking advantage of the pavement, being inclusive of having a right turn lane. Of course, there's traffic signalization at the intersection, but when it is a green light condition, that does allow traffic that's coming down the hill to get off the main line and to move in. Now, with all that said, VDOT has recognized that they like the concept, but when we get to the site plan stage, if the CUP is approved, we'll still have to go through an access management exception process with VDOT at the site plan because their distances are not totally met with this, although they certainly seem supportive of the concept. So hopefully that answers the access management part of it. The issue with the truck fueling, that's obviously a tough nut to crack. Staff's concern, of course, was they did not want this improvement to result in a mini-type truck stop on the property, and we agree with that. The Alkires currently do not cater to tractor truck fueling. The canopies are currently turned off at night. With the new additional, the canopy, what we suggested to staff was in order to make it more difficult or less attractive for a regular tractor trailer truck to assume this is a fueling point, was to put conditions on the site plan which limited the parking lot to not being allowed for tractor truck parking, and then also the speed pump, the elimination of speed pumps. We personally think those two items alone would be sufficient, and then to Mr. Dunn's point, if you did have the occasional truck that did come in there, then it did not become kind of a issue of are they in violation of the CUP or not. Of course, the intent is not to cater towards that market. The site condition restrictions are further allowance to show that that intent is trying to be met. But once again, to Mr. Dunn's point, if somebody came by, particularly off hours, there's really no good recourse to do that. And I think that's an important discussion point because one of the things that we want to make sure of course, the conditional use permit process is designed to protect the community when a business comes in, to make sure it operates within the parameters of the code and as we're all envisioning and hoping it to be. However, I'll share with you in the short time I've personally been involved with this project, there have been 2 complaints since I started the CUP process. And both of those complaints have turned out to really be much ado about nothing. The first one was there's an existing roughed-in entrance, and there was a complaint filed with VDOT about that entrance. We investigated that, found out that entrance was actually put in by VDOT a while back when they were doing road work in that area to give their equipment and their workers a place to stage. VDOT never closed that off. However, when VDOT reached out to the outliers, they went ahead, if you've seen it, and they barricaded that. After the Planning Commission, there was a question about with the health system, how would that be regulated? And of course, as you know, it's regulated through the Department of Health. That's currently how it is. The following day, I received a call from the sanitarian. There had been a complaint filed about the health system. Our soil scientists had previously been out there. There's no evidence of any problems. As a matter of fact, the outliers have a contract with Merit Sanitation to do maintenance on the existing drain field. The accepted practice is recommended annually. They have it done twice a year. So I think it's important to make sure that the conditions meet the intent of what we're trying to achieve here, but it does not result in an opportunity to make this kind of an open season on the applicants because, this is a young family who's taken a community store. If you've been there, you see that there's going to be a substantial investment made to bring it up to this standard, which is going to make it a safer condition and continue this for the betterment of the community for the foreseeable future. So we're very much interested in making sure that the conditions are appropriate, but not to give an opportunity where staff is constantly being asked to come look at something. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions of the board.
Supervisor Lofton?
Question. To Supervisor Fisher's remarks, the lighting under the proposed canopy obviously will be the new modern type. The existing canopy, will there be any modifications to the lighting there? Does that
No, the existing
new
canopy would not be modified. The new canopy would be compliant. To our knowledge, there has not been any issues with staff over the years with lighting going off the perimeter of the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Wyatt? Anyone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The applicant would like to add anything? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this conditional use permit application? Anyone at all? If you would, if you could just give us your name and magisterial district and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
I am Carolyn Anderson. I live at 104 Cedar Grove Road. He was talking about, I went to the library and got all these papers. And what I just heard about what VDOT said about this, and they were so generous about closing that entrance that's at our driveway, that I've got a mirror up there to be able for me to get out of my driveway because it's so bad, that VDOT recommend in these papers that I got at the library to close that intersection. And they would discuss the next, now somebody here is not telling the truth. Because let me tell you, I have went over these things, and another thing, where they're going to move that new, exit or entrance, there is 5 driveways, 5 of them, and maybe even more, that has to get out on that road with them right turn or whatever, they got to get out of there. How are they supposed to get out? Who cares? They're just human beings that pay their taxes every year. But this is just, I looked at this thing here and I went, well, there's 6 of them. And I'm going, look here, I've got to get out of this driveway and I have to have a mirror. And then, or I don't get out. I say a prayer every time I go out on that road. It is so bad. Everybody has commented, even the last hearing, they commented on that. We know it's a bad intersection. We know it's not good. I said they ought to do a road count and see how many vehicles is coming towards 522 or even coming in off of 522. Now, how they're going to solve it, I don't know. But this ain't going to solve it. And they recommend to close that whole intersection. If VDOT made a mistake, they made a mistake. They're trying to correct the mistake. At least I won't have to pray to get out on the road in Frederick County. And another thing is, the septic system, the health department said about the septic system, and that was right here in these papers that they provided me at the library. And they said that as long as they used the system they got right now, then they would be all right. But if they go over that, then they're not going to be all right. I said, well, who's going to monitor that? We don't know. I said, well, I guess we wait till we get the smell and everything else, because we're right across from it. And then what? They said, we'll go in and shut them down. Now, so who is telling me this stuff, and who is telling them that stuff?
Where do they close
I mean,
it
come
off
on. This is ridiculous. I mean, is a life worth this?
here? Here you come in here.
And that's what it's going to boil down to. So there's more and more and more. I go through these, and I looked at these papers and all this stuff, and they said fueling. It says in these papers that VDOT said that 654 was not built or equipped to handle any tractor and trailers or anything like that. It's in these papers.
Yes, ma'am.
So why are they saying tractor and trailers getting in there or getting out? They shouldn't even be on 654, according to VDOT. I mean, I have to listen to VDOT, then I hear this other stuff, and then in these papers it says about the septic system. So what are they going to do? Pretend they got a pump and go? Get Merritt come in there and pump it every so often, pretend that it doesn't exist? But they said that what would happen if it does fail and they're in there, they'll shut them down.
Yes, ma'am. You need to conclude.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha. Thanks.
I would suggest that you talk with Mr. Wyatt, and he may be able to help answer some of your questions.
Well, if VDOT
That's all I
can't
have
answer,
for you.
yeah, or the health department, then what?
Go
But
and
I
talk-
do know what they'll do
Go
if I
Talk with
smell
them
it.
as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay? Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to comment concerning this application?
Yeah,
Anyone at all? Yes, sir.
I'm Bobby H. Anderson. I live at 104 Cedar Grove Road, and I've been there 50 years. We got diesel fuel down Umsa's Garage. There's a mile or two down the road. We got Country Ridge Store. They got diesel fuel. You got Sheetses. They got diesel fuel. The trucks has got room down there at Sheetses and them places to come in, turn around, and got room. They ain't got the room out there behind that store. It's not enough room. I drive a rollback and I drive a truck and trailer and I go into few places. It's hard to get in them little places. And then they back out in the road. Then at nighttime, that's going to be a mess. Trucks are needed, noisy. I think it's ridiculous. It's been a country store. Everybody else out there has made a good living. They're trying to make it like a 7-Eleven or Sheetzus. We don't need that out there in that neighborhood. I'm sorry. I appreciate it, but I think you need to look in it. Go out there and look at the situation, the land. I had a heck of a time getting a house built over there for my son on 3 acres. And now they want to do this? It's not enough room. The asphalt, and then are they going to plant some trees? Are they going to put in some curb and guttering? And then the water. I live on a hill. The water comes down through there now when it rains and washes out. You put blacktop down, where's it going? They're not looking into it, fellas. You need to go out there and look at it. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to comment? Anyone at all? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. Mr. Wyatt, would you like to address any of the comments you've heard? Thank you, sir. Gainsborough.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to note that this is, like the previous CUP in Gainsborough, this is another small business that is locally owned and family operated, and it's served the community for many years. Locally owned small businesses have a positive ripple effect on the local economy, as they tend to purchase much of their merchandise locally. Then they utilize the services of other local businesses, such as accountants, attorneys, and repair services, keeping the money in the local economy. In addition to the physical changes to the property being proposed, this will improve the flow of traffic into and out of the business and consequently have a positive effect on the safety of the entrance and egress from the property. One suggestion I would have for a change, Mr. Chairman, is item number 5 says no outdoor display of goods will be permitted. I think this is perhaps unnecessarily restrictive because it would eliminate even having containers of windshield washer fluid for sale at the pump. So I would I would move approval of conditional use permit 08-16 for Crossroads Grocery with the elimination of item number 5.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I've heard what Greenway Engineering has to say, and I've heard what the other people have to say. Can I ask them where they live in relationship to this map up here? I'm familiar with that, but I'm just asking the question, Mr. Chairman.
Ask staff.
All right. The people that were making the comments, Mr. Sharon, where do they live in relationship to this intersection?
If you look at the map to your left, right there, right across the bottom half, property right there, 104 Cedar Creek.
So it's in the lower right-hand, lower right-hand portion of that. So they're going out on to Cedar
Grove.
Cedar Grove, is that correct? And most of the traffic comes down 522. I've been down that road. So they go onto Cedar Grove to get out. Is the traffic count there significant or not significant?
Coming off of Cedar Grove Road. I wouldn't call it significant, being it's a,
I'm just asking the question. And then the other question is either the state deals with the sanitation issue. I mean, there's certain health requirements that they have to meet, correct?
That's correct.
So this new applicant is going to still have to meet existing health standards, and that will be on an ongoing basis, correct?
That's correct.
And finally, the tractor-trailer issue. Is it permissible to have signs that say no tractor-trailers allowed, or is that considered discriminatory? In other words, does that limit then the concern raised on large vehicles coming in as opposed to getting their diesel fuel elsewhere. You already talked about the speed item, so I'm aware of that. I'm just asking this a question.
You can obviously add it on a condition. However, what makes it problematic is if you're having a delivery vehicle, for instance, if you go out there, again, as I pointed out earlier, for AM deliveries, you may have a large truck to come in there. So I
Okay.
think that would be an issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir?
would it be appropriate if I could ask Mrs. Anderson a question about this? She said she has...
It's inappropriate.
Huh?
It's inappropriate.
I just wonder what...
But I want you to get an answer to your question if you want.
Well, the mirror that you say you're using, is that for northbound traffic on Cedar Grove Road? People coming off 522 headed north?
Yeah, it's been there since right after they put the road in.
But the mirror itself is for traffic coming off 522 heading north?
That's it, because see, they think by the time, now we own that whole section there. And our son lives just beyond that. I don't know how they get out of there with that. There's a concrete wall that goes around up there.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that area, but I just wanted to make sure that the mirror was situated for northbound traffic. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Come down the driveway, I can see the traffic coming around off 522.
Okay.
But it's been broken a couple of times because of a fuel truck out into it.
Supervisor Lofton, if I might add, my review of the proposed site plan is going to push more of the traffic from 522 to the entrance a little further down rather than onto Cedar Grove Road, so I think it's going to improve the safety and the access for the Andersons.
Well, that was my assumption also, but I wanted to make sure I was correct, and that mirror was detecting traffic coming from which way. So, yeah, I agree with that the new entrance, I think, would take traffic off Cedar Grove Road if they're coming in just to visit the convenience store.
Yeah, because otherwise, right now, it's such a short distance through the intersection to turn into the existing canopy. This is going to move that traffic further down and I think improve the safety at that intersection.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone? Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hess.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and the CUP is approved with the elimination of requirement number 5. That brings us to rezoning 07-16, Ascension Road Rentals LLC. Ms. Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The Cincinnati Road Rentals application seeks to downzone 2 acres from the RP, which is the Residential Performance District with proffers, to the RA, Rural Areas District, without proffers. Now, what this rezoning is doing, it's seeking to eliminate the proffers that were associated with rezoning number 7 of 2006, which rezoned the property from the RA district to the RP district with proffers. Now, the property is located on Cincinnati Road, about 350 feet west of Ashley Drive. If I can direct you to the screen to your left, subject property is outlined in black. As you can see, Cincinnati Road runs along the frontage. Now, the 2006 rezoning allowed for 4 single-family dwellings and required the construction of a new public road. The applicant is now seeking to rezone the property back to the RA district to eliminate the proffers and allow for the construction of 1 single-family dwelling. Now, I would note that 1 dwelling currently exists on the property, which is a mobile home, and that would be removed to allow for the construction of the new dwelling. Now, this is the generalized development plan that was proffered with the previous rezoning. As you can see, the 4 lots and the proposed public road. Now, the Cincinnati Eastern Frederick area plan of the comprehensive plan identifies the area with a residential land use. Now, the current RP zoning is on the subject property is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan. However, the current proffers associated with the property could make the development of the 4 lots with the public road impractical just due to the cost constraints of building that new public road. You have a homeowners association requirement, so that's why they're seeking to downzone back to the RA. Now, note, this is just the current zoning of that area. As you can see, the subject property outlined in black, and the area that is without the coloring is RA. You have the proposed Route 37 in this location. So here is your subject property, and you have a number of other lots that were consistent with the proposed RA zoning. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of this rezoning at their August 3rd meeting with the stipulation that the applicant dedicate the extra right-of-way necessary for future Cincinnati Road widening. The applicant has since completed that exercise. They had that signed off by VDOT. It was recorded yesterday, provided to staff, so that has been completed. So tonight, following the public hearing, staff is seeking a decision from the board on this requested rezoning. I would be glad to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Questions, Ms. Perkins, anyone?
Yes, I just want to confirm that the right-of-way has been agreed to.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Anything the applicant would like to add?
I'm Carl Hales, one of the members of the LLC. I just reiterate what Ms. Perkins said. It's economically infeasible to do what we started out to do in '06. The economic climate changed drastically, as we all know, and we're just not in a position to market that property with the cost that's associated with it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed rezoning, 07-16? Anyone at all? Anyone? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. Redbud?
Mr. Chairman, I've talked to the applicant. I believe this is a good project. It's going to go and allow them to build a house. It's not going to interfere with anybody else. Ms. Perkins says we have the right-of-way. That was important. So for that reason, I would move that we approve rezoning number 7-16 of Cincinnati Road Rentals LLC, submitted to rezone 2 acres from RP to RA, with the restrictions on that, which included no animals, no livestock, I believe. No? Okay, I'll strike that.
No, all right.
It will be done to remove from RP to RA.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Request of Cumberland Properties LLC. Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This request before you today, or I should say tonight, excuse me, is to remove parcels from our Ag and Forestal District. The request is to remove 6 parcels totaling 407.48 acres from the North Opatkin Agricultural and Forestal District. The North Opatkin Agricultural and Forestal District was established in 2013 and has been renewed 1 time. The most recent renewal of this district occurred in 2015 for a period of 5 years. The removal of these parcels will extinguish this district. If I could turn to your attention to the map on your left, the district is outlined along the Opatkin Creek, and it involves all of the 6 parcels. The Agricultural District Advisory Committee, or ADAC, considered this request during their meeting on July 26, 2016. The ADAC unanimously recommended that the 6 parcels be removed from the district. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the ADAC's recommendation to remove these 6 parcels from the district at their August 17, 2016 meeting. Staff is seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this request for the removal. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, even though we are extinguishing this 1 district, we still have 11,281 acres in ag and forest. Let's just understand, extinguished people think, oh, the whole district, but you still got 5 more districts are pretty healthy and pretty still running. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions you or board members may have on this withdrawal from our agricultural and forestal district. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Chairman, anyone?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in the notes, you had discussions on conservation easement. Are they using this to go into it for the purpose of, can you elaborate on the conservation easement portion?
You're right. It was done at the Planning Commission with the applicant, Mr. Cumberland wants to do. He's going with the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, I think is what it's called, which is a conservation organization. For him to do that, though, they want you have to move pieces around of the properties. As you know, in our ag and forestal district, once you're in there, you can't do any subdivision other than a family subdivision. For him to do that, to get into that conservation group, that's why he has to come out of the district.
Okay.
It'll probably stay as you're seeing right now, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Chairman? Anyone? Thank you, sir. Applicant have anything they'd like to add? That's not here. That'll be easy. So this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this request of Cumberland Properties 4 LLC to remove parcels totaling 7.48 acres plus or minus from the Ag and Forestal District? Anyone at all? Anyone? And we'll close the public hearing portion. Stonewall?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a recommendation to request that Cumberland Properties 4 LLC to remove parcels totaling 407 acres, .48 acres from the North Opequon Agricultural and Forestal District.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Anyone? Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Hess?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. That will conclude our public hearings. Board liaison reports, are there any? All right. Citizen comments. It's a portion of the meeting reserved for citizen comments on any issue. Is there anyone who would like to share with the board? Yes, ma'am. If you'd come forward, share your name, magisterial district, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. You're sporting a new bracelet since we've seen you last. We're sorry.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ruth Perrine, and I live in Shawnee Land located in the Back Creek District. I, as well as Bob Steig, CEO of the Claremont Foundation and member of Preservation Northern Shenandoah Valley, co-chair the Citizens Committee to preserve the Clouser House. This committee has been working hard to meet the stipulations presented by the Public Works Committee within the 90-day study period granted to us. We were prepared to present our progress and proposal at the August Public Works Committee meeting, but since it was canceled, we will instead present at the September 27th meeting, and they will report to you. I have met individually with Supervisor Wells and Supervisor Lofton and wish to thank them for taking the time out of their busy schedules to aid in our course. In spite of the fact that we have de-emphasized fundraising until the fate of the Clouser House has been determined, we have already received in donations half the money needed to repair the back wall. We will also be selling signed and numbered offset prints of the Clouser House with the Shawnee Land Water Wheel House done by juried artist Michael Martin. This will help pay for our expenses for the work needed to determine if the Clouser House is inside or outside of the dam inundation zone. Martian Leg has already completed a survey which determined the house elevation to be at 878.5 feet. The other piece to this is the figure for the maximum water level at the house should the dam fail, which we will provide from an engineer prior to the Public Works Committee meeting. Preservation Northern Shenandoah Valley is currently collecting tax-deductible donations for the Clouser House. For those donors who specify such, their donation will be returned if we are unable to save the house. We are in the process of setting up the Clouser Foundation, a Virginia nonprofit corporation. We believe this will be the best answer for an entity which will assume permanent ownership and liability of the house, as well as the renovation and continued maintenance of the house. The proposal we will present will include the uses of the house and how that relates to the mission of the foundation. We look forward to working together to save this historic structure as an integral part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board on any subject? Yes, ma'am. Share your name and magisterial district and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
My name is Wendy Johnson. I'm in the Shawnee District of Supervisor Fisher, and I live on Cressley Drive. And I'd like to thank the Transportation Committee for looking into the safety options regarding turning left onto my street. All too often, I've seen people try to go around onto the property of Janet and Chris DeCanio because they're in a hurry and they want to go, and I understand that that's a safety issue. I hope that the Traffic Committee has also considered the unintended consequences of how difficult it is for the residents of Oakdale to leave Cressley in the mornings or in the afternoons, anytime during rush traffic. Leaving our community off our street is extraordinarily difficult. Generosity of other residents often allows us to turn left onto Cincinnati to get to where we need to go, dance lessons, sports activities, any of those things at a busy time of the evening especially. Or people will turn right and then do a U-turn at one of the others, at the country store or at Cincinnati School. So I hope that that's being considered whenever this turn lane, which I think is a very useful piece of work. There needs to be something done to allow the residents to escape, because right now it would be extraordinarily difficult. Whether it be a three-way stop, which could then let traffic flow pretty readily, or a traffic light, perhaps, although I hate the idea personally of having traffic back up to my house in the mornings as commuters come and go. So I would actually prefer the three-way stop. But something to allow for the residents and even the people who commute through my neighborhood of the 3,700 cars a day to be able to get to where they need to go. 3,700 cars, by the way, was in the summer. It was the Sheriff's Department measurements this summer. Now that school has started again and children's activities have started again, I know my personal trips have gone from 2 a day to at least 4 to 6. And that's just my household on Cressley. So I can only imagine all the other people who have to go to and fro in front of my home with my young children. I feel certain it's got to be more than 3,700 cars a day now that school has started. So I hope that the Traffic Commission will please, please, please look at that unintended consequence. I know you're trying to make it a safer place. I know that y'all are trying to facilitate the flow of traffic. We do understand those things, but we also ask your help in helping us to be able to live our lives within our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir. If you'd come forward, name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please, sir.
Hello, my name's Chuck Besa, Shawnee District. I'd like to sort of echo the comments that you heard earlier. I've lived in the 278 Hunters Ridge for the past 13 years. I've had 2 mailboxes hit by errant drivers. My fence, which is actually in the middle of my property, was hit by an errant driver. You know, we've heard a lot about growth. Growth isn't necessarily a bad thing. What I do have a fear over is public safety, damage to my property, the death of a pet. I really believe that the public safety aspect of the traffic through the area has been overlooked by this group. It actually gets me very emotional, if you can't tell. And I don't think you're doing a service to us by not addressing the issues. It's about public safety. And our neighborhood isn't safe. And it's your responsibility to do something about it. I'd like to ask you to come someday and walk in my neighborhood with me. Would you do that?
I'll comment a little later.
Is that a yes, sir?
I will comment at the appropriate time.
That is a yes, then.
You can't badger the
I'm just asking.
man sitting in his chair, sir.
Okay, I'm just asking a question.
Understood.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Matt Holman with the Shawnee District, members of the board. Just going to follow up. I live in the Oakcrest or Oakdale neighborhood as well, and I appreciate Mr. Bishop's efforts, and we've been working together since April, I believe, is the first time that he and I met. And through his advice and through guidance and stuff like that, we've also initiated some efforts on our neighborhood's behalf, and we work with the Sheriff's Department and things like that. Something I do have some concerns about, although I think it's a movement in the right direction, which is the turning lanes. I do have some concerns with, even though VDOT's and the transportation's efforts are to focus on the flow on the main route of traffic, which is Cincinnati Road. But that same consideration, looking back through the records of VDOT over the last, since 1999, through their annual reports, I do have the numbers here I'll present to you, and you guys can have for copies as well. We are getting 1/3 of the traffic coming off of Cincinnati Road, which is passing through our corridor from Cincinnati Road to Route 50. And something I do have some concerns about are, one, backing up traffic into the neighborhood, blocking some of the exits from some of the residents, and also looking at the engineering details on through VDOT's own reports. You know, we're only looking at a 200-foot basically turn lane near max, and I know there's a lot of considerations based on the speed, the geography, and also the distance allowed based on the width of the road. But at the same time, you know, that's going to give us 4 or 5 cars that want to turn left. What are you going to do when it backs up now in front of a small business, which would be Throck's Country Store? Now you're blocking a school lane, which is trying to exit out of the Cincinnati Road Elementary. So those things I know that are being taken into consideration. My concern is it a Band-Aid for a gash that has been created on a county's decision to open up a corridor from Route 50 to Cincinnati Road? So that's my concerns with being a resident and meeting with my neighbors and stuff like that and hearing their concerns. I know Cressley is going to be the one that really sees the efforts, the impacts on that. But at the same time, you know, it is still focusing through there. I do look forward to seeing some addressed answers and stuff like that, but I do have a concern that this is just a Band-Aid for a gash and that new considerations need to be looked at. And I understand that H2B has its own efforts about what they're willing to fund and things like that, but a traffic light or something that is monitored, that type of traffic analysis needs to be looked at and reconsidered possibly with the application for the H2B funding. You know, 3-way stops would be good. You know, it will allow flow of traffic on Cincinnati. So that's my comments, and I'd like to present the studies I've found to you.
Really? Thank you, sir.
If I can make one comment I forgot to give to you, there's 5 copies that can get more.
Yeah, we'll share them.
Okay. If I may, for just 30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so over the summer, I worked with the Frederick County Sheriff's Department. We created an effort to do a traffic analysis, and we know that these are based on just a sensor, which is what I refer to in my technology realm as a dumb sensor. It doesn't take any type of private information. It basically does a speed count, and it does a traffic count. So through their analysis, we've got an increase from the 2005 study on Cressley from the 2,900 cars up to 3,690 cars a day. On Hunter's Ridge and Fairfield, on Hunter's Ridge, we went from 1,300 cars in 2005 to 3,114 per day. The analysis brought forward by the Frederick County Sheriff's Department as just a generalized analysis is 25,835 cars passed through Ravens and Oakdale, Oakdale from Cincinnati to 50. So that should tell you the drastic increase. Considering that in 2015, the traffic study on Cincinnati Road was 12,000 cars as an estimate for the average daily car. So one-third of that traffic on Cincinnati Road is passing through our neighborhood. Is a turning lane enough to help us with that? We already have one critically injured neighbor across the street from my residence that is a result of poor management on the traffic management there. But I do applaud your efforts on going through with the H2B, but I do ask that the board relook at these, talk to the Frederick County Sheriff's Department. Please press forward with the VDOT to do this analysis and do it right versus just doing a scrub, because I know that they are rough estimates. But this is something I think that is a lot more of a priority and may need to be raised on the priority, because someone else is going to get hurt and possibly killed on this road. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. We are not unaware of your issues, and we're certainly concerned. And it's not the only really critical issue in the community either. We're really doing the best we can. We will not let it go. I know that Supervisor Fisher's watched us very closely for a very long time. We understand. Anyone else? Anyone else like to address the board on any issue? All right. Board of Supervisors comments, are there any?
Mr. Chairman, nobody has any more frustrations than I do, and I know what you're talking about, and if the gentleman was asking the question, if you'll wait just after the meeting, I'd like to get the contact information, and yes, I will come meet with you. I have a number of friends, one on Hunter's Ridge Road that a number of years ago put some orange cones out and did traffic calming, and it worked till VDOT came in and said, oh, you're going to be liable, and made them take it out. So I'm hoping, Mr. Bishop, we get this traffic calming thing done, but that's not near the frustrations, and the frustrations, I guess, on my part are a failure to get VDOT to do anything, which a lot of times is stuff beyond our control, but I understand what's going on over there, and I'll share with you some things that have been done, but they're relatively insignificant. They've done a few things, but all I can say is I sympathize with you. I will not quit. I will stay after VDOT and work through our transportation committee to do everything we can. The flow through traffic certainly was a red flag. When I came on the board, this rezoning was already approved, but I can assure you any new rezonings that have come through, unfortunately at your all's expense, I would just jump up and down and fight like the Dickens for any other cut-throughs of any other residential developments, because it's not a good thing. So, but I'll be glad to come meet with you, and I'll get with you right after the meeting if you don't mind waiting.
Supervisors' comments, anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, Ms. Bryan, who came up with the Clouser House, just to compliment her on the hard work that she's done. I've met with her, and Mr. Lofton's met with her. So she's done a good job, and I look forward to Public Works seeing your report. And thank you very much for doing that.
Anyone else? Vice Chairman Fisher.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
To adjourn. Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.